Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. So we are going to spend the next 30 to 40 minutes. I'm conscious that lunch is waiting, so will not take too much of your time. So we are here to discuss one very interesting and also very relevant topic, especially for aspiring CFOs, which is CFOs as strategic partners. I think everybody is well versed that over the last 2 decades, the role of CFO has seen a dramatic transformation from the focus earlier was more on managing funds, compliances, reporting. From there, the role has completely moved to being business partners. Today's CFOs are looked upon for key decision making in the organizations. They are actually driving growth along with the CEOs and the other business heads. They are today driving even automation across the organization, which is very relevant for today's time. So without much ado, let me go to my eminent panelist. They need no introduction today. So let me first go to Deepak. So Deepak, we have talked about the role changing over the last 2 decades. So what exactly has changed, and how do we compare a traditional CFO with that of today's new age CFO?
I think the basic thing which has changed now since when I started my career almost 30 years back was, there was a line which is more compliance and, reporting. And the CFO had the ability to say, look, this is what I would do. He or she was not very key. They understood the business all the time, but they were not actually partnering that, how the business is actually growing, what are the key components, and they were not taking day-to-day part, in the sense. Now, with the news age and, the new CFOs who are coming in and, most of the CFOs, who are sitting here, you have to be out in the ground. Apart from Mr. Jain also mentioned that, communication is one of the biggest thing, and you have to be strategic in nature. If you do just the reporting, you cannot just keep driving, obviously the, company based on the rear view mirror. You have to have a focus, you have to have the tools to be able to handle what's coming, and making the organization ready for future. That is the biggest change versus, what I see, maybe 20, 30 years back versus now. Today, the CFO are expected to tell the CEOs or the board for that matter, this is what the risks are, this is how we are going to manage the risk, and this is what, we will have to be ready for it. So one of the biggest things which the CFOs drive are that the organization is future ready, which is working hand to hand with the CEOs, and the board, overall. And that is one of the biggest changes. And as you rightly say, systems, making sure that, when the organization grows, the systems are actually ready to be able to deliver without obviously, getting into the major overheads and things like that. So, getting the productivity and efficiency, which has become the part and parcel. If you are doing reporting, you are doing compliances, that is the part of the role irrespective. But how do you really bring efficiency? How do you really bring productivity? And how are you a spokesperson for an external stakeholders? Because, value creation is one of the critical aspects which the CFOs plays today, apart from the CEOs. And, put together, actually speaking, the left hand, the right hand, CEOs and CFOs, they will have to drive together the business. Only one person actually cannot do that job, in my view.
Very true, Deepak. Amit, if I can hear your thoughts also on how this role has transformed over years.
So I think Deepak has covered most of it, which I wanted to highlight. I think the key is the understanding of the big picture. What is a group vision, and how is a group vision actually being delivered by the CEO of the company? How you are partnering with him, and I always say that CFOs run the board because they are the interface actually with the board members, that what's happening in the company, is it exactly in line with the board's vision? So they run the board vision. And second key point is CFOs need to have a technology mindset. So if he knows that the way competitive environment is, the way you are managing cost, what are the latest technologies focused on their business which are available, and how you can look at implementing those technologies. Obviously, AI is a buzzword today, and everybody talks of AI. So I would say that usage of AI in a very smart way, how that AI can help you to do your things better. Ultimately, the objective is how you streamline the organization, not just focus on the upper jaw, which is revenue, but also the lower jaw, as that will help in ensuring that your margins are always protected. So CFOs play a key role in managing that as well.
Let me go to Vinod. Vinod, while all of us are stressing more on the role of a CFO as a business partner driving growth, but at the end of it, we cannot forget our traditional role as well. Those are responsibilities which we still shoulder. How do you maintain a balance between the two?
I echo what has been said by Amit and Deepak. The CFO role is changing, and today, what used to be predominantly a control compliance agenda for a CFO has become much more strategic. And it's important to recognize that this balance has to be struck by the CFO, because you need to make sure that the company has the license to operate, so you can't let go of the controls and the compliances. At the same time, you need to be focused on driving, being proactive and driving taking a very strategic view of the business. You need to think about what are the competitive threats, what are the trends emerging in the economy, because the world is changing very fast, and what risks and opportunities does that throw up. You know, traditionally the CFOs, as was mentioned in the morning, have been focused on risk, but you need to also look at what are the opportunities it throws up. As an example, in the current role that I am playing, we are, providing mobility solutions. And why do we call it not just petrol and diesel for cars? Because we are all part of an energy transition. The biggest challenge we have in this energy transition is nobody knows the pace at which it will happen. That pace is determined by all of us as customers of or users of mobility. And each one of us will make our own choices based on, does an EV fit for you, or a traditional internal combustion engine car be the right choice for you for your mobility needs. Now, in that transition, when I as a CFO look at, what do we want to drive the company's strategy towards, we want to make sure that we are positioning ourselves such that we are able to capture the opportunities that emerge as customers transition towards using more cleaner fuels. At the same time, if I invest too heavily on the cleaner fuels and there is no customer, my company's financial performance will suffer. So how do we strike that balance? How do we make sure? And that leads us to the fact that we need to have a very proactive and responsive behavior. So you have to be proactive to be able to anticipate where the trends are emerging. But at the same time, you have to react. Sometimes you will get it wrong, and you will have to then tweak your strategy or pull back from certain things or slow down on certain things. As all of you would have seen, everybody was gung-ho about the growth rates in the EV industry, but of late it seems to have tapered off a bit. So how do you adjust your strategy? Your strategic North Star or your goal may not change, but how do you adjust the pace of your strategy to fit with the narrative and to fit with what is happening in the external environment? So that's where I think the balance has to be struck between maintaining the traditional role of a CFO, at the same time becoming a key partner to help capture the opportunities and the business and grow the business and move it forward.
Right, Vinod. I fully appreciate that the balancing act is easy said than done, and I know the challenges all of us go through. Rohit, if I can come to you, you are the CFO of an organization which is very different than the conventional commercial organization. How do you balance this role, and how would this role emerge for an organization like yours?
First of all, thanks to BW Business World team for having me here. Very good afternoon to you all. Thanks, Preeti, for that question. So, I'm part of Wadhwani Foundation. We are a philanthropic initiative, and we are focusing on job creation. So, we're really looking to upskill the youth of the country and also aspiring entrepreneurs to take on more and more jobs and be in fact the job creators in the society rather than the job seekers, which I think is also one of the critical needs of our country. So again, the role of the CFO, as my fellow esteemed panelists have been saying, it's really gone a dramatic change and it's ever evolving. So, so no longer it's about being predictive, it's more about prescriptive analysis. So the business is also looking at CFOs to help navigate the complexities in the environment. And with all due respect, I strongly believe probably CFO position is the only one which can connect all the dots in the organization, because each vertical leader may be focused on his or her own scope of work. But as a CFO, we are in that unique situation and a position where we can really see through and help connect the dots. I think that insight is very, very critical. And if CFOs don't step up and weave the story around that, I think we will not be doing justice to our role, especially in the current environment. So that is what my endeavor is also, to try and look for such emerging trends, whether it's risk or opportunities, and bring it to the CEO or the board that hey, there is some opportunity, or here there is something risk involved, which is not apparent on the face. I think that cuts both ways. Sometimes it is appreciated more. Sometimes, as we typically hear that, hey, CFOs are naysayers and all. So I think it cuts both ways. So that's what we need to be conscious of and keep driving and adding value to the organization. Thank you.
Very well said, Rohit. Upma, if I can come to you, we are living in very unpredictable world. We really don't know what is in store for us when we wake up the next morning. Geopolitics is changing every single day. Market dynamics are changing. World is becoming far more complex. How do CFOs bring in resilience? And we've all navigated through the worst periods in the century, which is COVID. And all of us have bounced back. So how do CFOs bring in that resilience and gear up the organization to manage this not so predictable world?
Thank you, Preeti, and thank you, Business World, for having me in this panel. Let me just talk about, I think my co-panelists talk about the strategic role what the CFOs are being performing these days. So one of the important thing is it's like building resilience, or having your business model which is insulated with all your external factors, and you may have the shocks. How are you doing it? So you're working very, very closely with not only with your CEOs, but with your board, with your risk teams, and giving the signals absolutely at the right time, not waiting for it that I've given my advice, making sure the people are able to take action. That is what the role today's CFOs are doing. They are saying, I mean, if I talk about the liquidity in the financial sector, definitely liquidity is it's our raw material. And if we feel that, we are not having sufficient liquidity, while there will be explanations, yes, we will not face any problem. But if you see that you are not ready for having the sufficient liquidity, these are the times when the CFOs are now raising, because everybody has gone through the black swan event and they have seen it, how critical that particular element is there. Gone are the days when we talk about the negative carry. People say, hey, you're keeping a lot of cash, but this is also eating it up, your ROA. It is a very fine balance, but this is how the CFOs have actually started calling it out, and they're being more proactive. And the risk-taking capacity is also increased. Earlier, typically, we'll share the numbers, we'll say this is how the performance talks about. Instead of talking about the past, it's now more of online. Hey, what are we doing it? And if any course correction needs to be done, the respective business teams are able to do it because of the data democratization. The CFOs are ensuring that it is no more a time of having the data only at the month ends, but as you're progressing, you're also getting a sense of how the numbers are shaping it up, not only the business numbers converting into your financial KPIs. So that's the way CFOs are making sure they remain agile while the business is already working towards the agile mode.
A proactiveness and agility clearly remains at the core. Akshay, if I can go to you, your business is like a marketplace.
Yeah.
How do you imbibe, resilience in your kind of a business? Yours is a very dynamic business which keeps changing with, so much of technology coming into play. How do you manage resilience part of your business?
So I think, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Business World, for having me here. I think as all the esteemed co-panelists said, I mean, the role of the CFO has transformed. I think from compliance-oriented to being more strategic partners, from more of hindsight to foresight, I mean, from revenue assurance to revenue, the partners. I think it has, changed and evolved totally. I think from a resilience perspective, I think that two things are very important. I think, most of us have to now rely on the real-time data insights, right? I mean, you can't wait for a month end that, something has gone bust and, now we need to solve for it. And that will get driven through the digital transformation in the company. Having said that, digital transformation, it's a tough one, right? I mean, you may think that, just adopting the technology, or let's say just selection of the technology might solve for it. The biggest challenges lies in the adoption and the execution. So I think here the CFO has to play a very critical role from end-to-end execution. That's the one binding thread, I mean, which knows the organization end-to-end from a value chain perspective. You define the KPIs, define the way they are measured so that everyone in the company, right, I mean, is looking at those numbers and, there is no disconnect. Secondly, I would say, I mean, you should build out a performance management framework through which a lot of data insights goes on to the respective business leader, and that comes with a lot of foresight as well. And that can only be enabled once you have, strong control over the data. I think one thing I famously, I used to hear in my previous organizations, a lot of organizations have data, but very limited information. So I think that's the complexity which through, you need to navigate through.
We are talking about, CFOs or growth drivers, key decision makers in the organization. Now, obviously, no growth or no decisions in organizations happen in isolation. Everybody needs to be taken along. All the key decision makers need to be taken along. Now, how difficult it is to bring about that collaboration in an organization and to influence all the key stakeholders in the organization to drive the business in the direction that you want to take?
The biggest challenge which comes in between is that, everybody first starts saying that, this data is incorrect. That is the starting point. The person you go with the data, the person will say, this is wrong. Now, how do you really overcome that? And how do you really bring trust and integrity of data to say, whatever they are seeing? And, system adoption automation has actually become one of the part and parcel of the journey. So that, if the sales guy comes in, he has got the real-time information, how much sales, if he is sitting in front of the customer, then he or she should be able to see, what kind of pricing they have actually done. What is the cost which we are running currently? And this has to be dealt with so that they cannot question the data per se. That is number one. Second thing is getting the systems which are standardized systems. If you have multiplicity of systems, because most of the organizations, when they are getting into the digitization, the biggest challenge comes in, plethora of systems and none, of the systems talks to each other. So if they are connected to each other, it becomes far more easy because then the data which they are seeing, it can be slightly dated, but it's still the data is correct. That is number two. The third thing is that how do you really ensure that, whatever decisions they are taking are actually correct. So, you have to go through the hoop because most of the digitization processes or decision-making processes, the people who are taking the decisions have to be involved at the first place. If the buy-in is there, they understand, what they needed on a day-to-day basis, whether it is dealing with the customer or even at the shop floor or even, wherever, from their supply chain perspective. Now, unless and until they know the kind of data which they are getting in is, going to help them in taking day-to-day calls and immediate calls. I think that is one of the biggest things which, generally people will see. And if we are able to take the hoop, so the way I have done it in the organization, because I do also have the hat of the digitization in the process, which is called transformation theme. And there, you will have to take into account and sign-offs from all the stakeholders. Once they have the sign-offs from them, what they needed, and once they have it, I think it becomes far more easier for them to adopt, because eventually they have to adopt, they have to use it, and they have to be able to take the right decisions. That brings in obviously ownership. The second thing is that it also brings in the confidence that whatever they are seeing is correct. And the third thing is that they also know the kind of value which is creating for themselves and for the organization. Because only when the people see that kind of a value, they will be automatically be much more motivated, instead of challenging the whole system to say that this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And if they are motivated, I'm sure they do it. In fact, I've been obviously fortunate that there are stakeholders who are themselves taking ownerships, and then raising the bar ahead, saying that if we can get this much, obviously the journey for them, it eases out their issues far more easier compared to what they would have been doing. And the way we have done it is that we keep asking a question: whatever manual efforts you are doing or decision making which you are doing, which is not coming out of the system, if you are able to list down those things, we will be able to digitize all those things. So that whatever is coming to you is coming directly from the system, and there is absolutely no data integrity issues with whatever, so that is the way we have done it, in our organization.
Thanks. I think you've made a very relevant point. Now, for us, we run a power company in different locations. To have data on a live basis was a big ask for us. So today we have 3 plants operating, one in Chhattisgarh, one in South India, in Tirupati, and another in Maharashtra, Dhule. All 3 plants plus our solar business. All of that, we have live information in an app. So all of us who are key executives have an access to that app. And that app tells us if there is a problem, how soon you can take the decision. And the point, Deepak, you made around whether, it used to start with the same. The data is incorrect, It didn't happen now. If we have a plant outrage, we know now that in X plant, X unit is not working. There is a boiler tube leakage or there is some other issue. And immediately the team gets, activated, and we are able to address. So this availability of live data, I would say credible live data, is a big, opportunity for all CFOs to look at doing such automations which are really relevant for them. The second point which I wanted to highlight is the CFO has a vision of everything. So whether it is your revenue, whether it is your capex or your sustainable capex or your opex, all of that, you have that data with you, which other than you, maybe your MD has or maybe your key plant heads have. But you being a finance guy is able to figure out what's going right, what's not going right. So you need to be also act like a sounding board that this is an area of improvement, this is how we can do. So I think that change in the CFO's behavior, instead of just being a traditional CFO managing numbers, to working as a key stakeholder driving business along with the CEO, is a key change which we need to drive it.
That's exactly what you spoke about. That CFO has knowledge of all strategic objectives of the organization. If I were to talk about the softer part, how do you make sure that you bring alignment in the organization with these strategic objectives, and make sure, how do you play a mentorship role in making sure that everybody, whether part of your team or the other teams, are aligned to this strategic objective? How do you play that softer role?
I think it's a very relevant question, but I must say that it is also a function of who's manning the position. So if you've got a seasoned CFO who has also worked in business in the past, can play a key role in mentoring the new joiners in the system. And one is obviously aligning them to the big vision of the group. That what is group vision? What is that which we want a new joiner to achieve? That is one. Second, we need to also mentor the people that, we are all stakeholders for the common objective, for the good of the organization. We are not one against other. So that working camaraderie is a key for success. So often CFOs are seen saying no, that's or no, this won't happen, right? I'm not comfortable. These are very usual CFO jargons which you see in the corporate world. But if CFO, instead of saying no, becomes a business enabler and comes out and say that, I see these are the opportunities which can happen and this is how you may want to look at. So new joiner will become very, very kind of this thing that, we are able to navigate in the organization. Second is for a new joiner mentoring perspective, he or she should introduce to the right trusted stakeholders who are working in the company. So that's the third piece from a mentoring perspective. Fourth is one should always share the best practices with the people who are joining, how those best practices, including the technology which you have implemented, is helping the organization. And then ask if they can bring any fresh pair of ideas and see how those fresh pair of ideas can be implemented in the organization so they also feel part of the journey. Ultimate objective is that the new joiners mentorship, these people should be able to see you as a sounding board and you are able to help them in navigating in the organization so that these people become successful. And as a result, the CFO also plays a key role in the success of the organization.
Right, perfect, Amit. Upma, if I were to go to you and we'll just drift a little away from the CFO role. We've seen a lot of CFOs being considered for CEO positions. What is driving that and why are CFOs getting considered for CEO positions?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And, as we all know, CFOs and CEOs, they work very, very closely. So they're literally complement to each other. While CFOs, they have their own financial acumen, they understand the, what are the financial jargons, how the business numbers convert into your financial metrics. But they are participating very closely with the CEOs, participating into the business, right from the business plan, strategy, making changes, meeting stakeholders' expectations, making sure that why am I not able to get the cash ROA, what needs to be done, where are we onto the risk part of it, where are we onto the regulation, how the overall landscape is changing. So what's happening is in the entire process, CFO is actually the right hand for the CEOs and he or she is getting what I can say mentored during the whole process and they are preparing themselves knowingly, unknowingly that they are also started taking decisions. Most of the time CFOs are like, we have shared the numbers, but decision making comes with also you're accepting certain things have gone bad, certain things have gone good, but accepting the bad thing and saying that this is, I'm standing up for, this is what I have taken the decision. So with this taking the decision making ability and the board is watching everything. While whenever there is a transition, the CEOs, there is a succession plan. The one thing what board is very comfortable is the CFO who is being working very closely, he or she is aware of the whole system and already prepared because that's how the mentorship is being happening over the years. And that's the best candidate for why not give the CFO the position of a CEO and take it forward.
See, generally what happens is that, profit making in the organization, if you really ask, apart from the CEO, the main decision maker also is the CFO. And if you are able to give a view that yes, this is how the company can make more profits or, generate more profitability or, and which is the CFO is actually in a position to do it. So if you are able to play that kind of a role, there is a very likelihood that you would get an automatic elevation, or a succession, to the CEO. Because otherwise the sales and, the other, functions are equally important. Not that they are not important, but the major critical role is the profit element and the stakeholders value. These are the two things which, obviously have lot of interfaces in terms of the succession planning at times. And if you have done two roles apart from the CFO, if you are also handled some other, functions apart from the, you become an automatic contender for that particular, kind of a role.
All these aspects are becoming very critical and that's clearly one of the reasons why CFOs are being considered for this role. Vinod, if I were to come to you, today, there's a lot of innovation which is being spoken of. Automation, of course, has its place, but boards, managements are expecting a lot of innovations to be brought in the organization. I'm not just referring to financial innovation, but innovation across every aspect. Now, what role do CFOs play in driving innovation? That's one. And secondly, innovation is not about just one or two people driving innovation, but there is need to have that culture in the organization. So how do you encourage and bring about that culture wherein everybody is thinking innovatively? So like to hear your thoughts on that.
Innovation to me has to be the foundation of how we function today, because the world is changing so fast that we are constantly being asked to innovate. It could be innovation, it doesn't necessarily have to be at a company-wide level, but it can be in the way we perform our tasks. Two, at a company-wide level, introducing some innovative ideas where, you are changing the way the industry functions. So it could range from any of these. What you need, as you rightly said, there has to be a culture where you promote innovation, where you help innovative ideas develop and grow within the corporate entity that you are in. So there are, obviously your processes, your controls, etc. How do you actually then within that also create the, if you like, the bedrock from where the shoots of innovation can, take place? And that to me comes from developing a culture of agility. A lot of people think of agility often as doing sprints and doing those kind of tools that are taught in agile processes, etc. But that's process. To me, agility is more a mindset, and what it needs, if I can put it down and break it down into three things, what it will need is, you need trust and autonomy. So managers need to give up control. You need to be able to trust and give decision making down the line to your teams, to those agile teams, to take the right decisions, to develop a minimum viable product that can be rolled out and tested so that you can learn. Because otherwise, you might try to get a perfect product, but it will take so long that you will be behind the bus. You need to have the culture and a mindset of transformation. So you are always thinking about how do you actually change things and do things better. And while doing all of this, you need to address, and this is what a lot of people often forget, you need to address employee well-being. It's very important that the employees feel that they are in a safe environment where they can try and fail at things. Failure is the starting point for success, especially when you're looking at innovation. So unless you try and fail, you will not really, get onto the next big idea or the next big thing. And it could be, as I said, it could be a simple process improvement to a very innovative idea which changes the way the industry functions. Also, I think is part of this, and I think some of my esteemed panelists also spoke about how to use digital tools and AI. I think it's all very important that as the CFO, you embrace all of these things. You embrace the way we can actually convert a lot of data we collect in the organization into actual information, or actually things that you can use to drive business decisions. Data on its own, without the right analysis and without the right, ability to pick out the right messages, is just noise. So you need to be able to use, and these are all AI, whatever whether you call it AI or whether you call it digital, or having all this information available at your fingertips at the same time is all important, such that you can actually increase the speed at which you take decisions. But you need the data to be coming out in a form that enables you to take the right decisions. So that to me is quite critical. Again, examples of this, can be lots. As a company, for example, we're probably the only company which, at least in the, retail fuels industry, which captures sales data only at the point when it is actually sold by the dealer to the customer. So our digital systems are such that we actually capture that data on a daily basis. So my daily sales report is actually not based on what I've dispatched to the dealer, but what the dealer has actually sold to the customer. So on a day when there is a strike in a particular region, my sales data are down. So these are the kind of things that, how do you actually use it to actually drive the right analysis? I'll pause here.
Yeah, Vinod, you made a very right point that even the smallest idea needs to be encouraged, because you really don't know when a small idea can make a big transformation for a business. Rohit, if I can come to you, you are in a space which is highly regulated. When we speak about risk management, how do you see risk management actually enabling growth? So while we as business leaders are focusing on growth, growing the business, it's important to have the back end in shape and so very strong that you're not really worried about how the growth is going to be affecting. So how do you look at risk management more from a growth enabler than a conventional risk management role?
Yeah, thanks, Preeti. Yeah, I think it's very important to understand and share the message that risk necessarily does not mean that something is broken. So risk management is about, okay, we are aware of what could go wrong. I think that's a very important distinction, because sometimes if you discuss with your business stakeholders, what is the risk? Everybody will be like, there is no risk. We know everything. So I think that's a fine distinction line, that when the CFO needs to talk about or draw up a framework of enterprise risk assessment, the idea is not to say that, hey, something is broken, but hey, what could go wrong? And then accordingly rank those things, what could go wrong and what could then be the impact of that if something goes wrong. So that really helps also the stakeholders to understand that, hey, we are nowhere saying that don't do this activity, but do this with certain caveats, or how that activity can really continue and how you can balance agility with compliance. Because, going on one side is very easy, you just go boom, boom after the growth. Tomorrow, something, you have violated some law. So that could be counterproductive. At the same time, you cannot have an inertia that, you don't do anything. So that's the fine line is required. And that is where continued socialization, continued awareness with the stakeholders is important, that here are the risk matrices, how we are trending against the same, what all is probably getting into a red zone, what all is manageable. So those continued dialogues really help enable the business teams also to take measured risk and keep driving the business forward. I'll just stop in the interest of time.
Right, Rohit. I know we are almost approaching the end, so I have one last question, Akshay, for you. We spoke a lot about automation, IT, and so on and so forth, and I'm sure other panelists also in the earlier sessions have spoken about it. You come from a very tech-dependent business. How has tech helped in your business strategies? Give us some examples where, in your case, tech has actually driven business strategies.
I think, look, digital transformation is not a choice. I think that's a mandate we have to follow. And I think in the earlier sessions, I heard that, there is a certain percentage of companies who have adopted, but, there are a lot of companies are still struggling with respect to implementation. I think data is the oil, and I think it has been coined, I think, a long time back. For us, I mean, that's at the forefront, coming from a tech background. I think the first thing is the real-time insights, right? I think adding AI layer on top of it gives you a lot of more predictive evaluations, right? For example, I mean, we run a platform, we have certain amount of traffic. I think what is the seasonality, how the system has behaved in the past 5 years? What are the specific dates on which, we are going to see a downfall in the traffic? You can build a lot of mitigant actions around it. You can see what's exactly, I mean, from a data perspective, it gives you an opportunity to build your revenue streams as well. Because I think if we know that, just like Asian Paints, what corner of the India, at what junction, what color, what exactly is the consumer habit, if you have that level of data science, maturity, I think that's what you can, sell out in the market, right? You can build those data insights, especially for the unorganized sector, because they struggle with this level of data, and it can add a lot of value. So I guess on top of it, I would say, I mean, when you have a lot of trends, with you, then you can also build a lot of more foresight versus, just relying on hindsight. Right? So I think these I would say, the three things. And I think the lastly I would mention here is that along with data, you can embed the risk management and the compliance as part of that. And here you strike the balance. And that also comes with a lot of awareness, where you need to educate your business folks that this is what all of us are together on the mission, and we are not going in different directions. So I think these are the few things I could add on.
Wonderful. So thank you all panelists. I know we are conscious of time, but thank you very much for your wonderful insights, and I'm sure we are leaving on table a lot of insights for our young aspiring CFOs. So thank you all once again.